Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Abram Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. On the topic gonna be God called and promised a great nation to Abraham. Now, see, God called Abraham this like 2 years after the flood. You know, I'm still going straight on from the beginning to the end. Um, this is right after the flood, 2 years after the flood. So that means Abraham is part of Noah's bloodline with his sons. Because Abraham's father came from Noah, one of Noah's sons. So this story about when God called for Abraham and promised to bless him, and make him into a great nation. Now this one God first speaking on his plan, for the Israelite, his offspring. So Abraham, come from the bloodline of Noah after the flood, 2 years later. So Abraham's father Terry, he died and he lived to 205 years, and that's a long time. He lived a long time, 205 years. So Abraham had a brother, Nahor, and his son is Lot. So that's where Lot come from. His father had his father died, and that's when Abraham's father was taking care of Lot. So when Abraham's father died, Abraham took care of Lot. So that's why Lot was following Abraham everywhere he went, because his father, grandfather died, and Abraham took over. So this practice gonna come from Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 9. The Lord has said to Abraham, go from your country, your people, your father, household, to the land I will show you. See, God will show you something first, just like He did about Moses. Moses couldn't even get to the promised land, but God still told him, you go up on that mountain and see the land that you was gonna go to. So that's the same thing He told Abraham before he entered. He said, come, go and see the land first before you enter." So now Abraham father died. Now Abraham is in charge of the family. Because see, first God had Abraham father was going to Canaan to live there. But then he settled in a country, and that's when he died. So he never made it to Canaan. So that's when God called Abraham. So Abraham, this has been 2 years after the flood. God called Abraham, and he had to leave his country, people, to France, and take a journey to the land that God would show him. Because see, when God had told Abraham to leave, I mean, he had to leave the friends behind, the neighborhood behind. He had to leave everything behind and come follow. He had to go to the land that he gonna give his offspring. So Abraham lived in Canaan, for a while. But then they had famine in the land. He had to go to Egypt. And when he gonna lie to his wife to say that she his sister, so he'd have been through what the Israelite gonna have to leave from to get to. So now God told Abraham, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curse you, I will curse them, and all the people on earth will be blessed through you. So this was a great call that Abraham got. I mean, God called him with great news. God had told him, your name gonna be great. I'm gonna make your name great. And he said, I'm gonna make you a great nation. We know that his offspring, the Israelite, was a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. So Abraham had to run for nothing. God said you're gonna be blessed. You're gonna be a blessing to someone. And matter of fact, everybody on the on earth gonna be blessed through Abraham. So there was a big promise that God had made to him. It was two promises. God called Abraham. It's about the land, Canaan. You know, God chose that land for his plan. You know, and then God made a promise to Abraham that I'm gonna bless you. You know, I'm gonna make your name great. You're gonna be a great nation. You know, you're gonna be a blessing to someone else. You know, everyone on earth gonna be blessed through you. You know, so first God called Abraham to show him the land that he will give him, his ancestors. You know, because Abraham started out with 75 years old, so he never made to a God plan. So he had to pass on to his offspring. You know, so second, God made a promise to Abraham. You know, God said, I'm going to make you a great nation. You know, God said, I'm going to bless you. You know, you're going to be a blessing. You're going to be a great, your name going to be great. You know, God will bless those who bless you. God will curse whoever curse you. You will be a blessing. Everyone on earth going to be blessed through you. You know, so this was great news that God had called Abraham. You know, so Abraham went as the Lord had told him. His nephew Lot, you know, went with him, you know, and his wife. And when God called Abraham, he was 75 years old. So he already was in age when God called him. You know, so that's why God already had other people in place. You know, we already know Isaac was the next, you know, link. And we know Jacob was the third link, you know, because Abraham already was 75 years old time God called him. You know, so Abraham was 75 years old, and Abraham had to take all the possessions that had accumulated. You know, he took all that with him, and Abraham set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. You know, so this is the land of Canaan. You know, later on, God will give this land to Abraham offspring. You know, so Abraham arrived and he traveled through the land. So when he arrived, he started traveling through the land, sightseeing. You know, far as the sight of the great trees. That's the first thing he saw was the great trees. And you remember when I put something out months ago about when they possessed the land. You know, when they possess the land, they bomb everything, shoot up everything, destroy everything. But God told them, do not cut down those trees. You know, it was a every time they possess the land, they was cutting down the trees and stuff. But God said, don't cut these particular trees down. You know, so these trees are very important on this land. You know, because you know this land gonna be filled with milk and honey. You know, so Abraham arrived. He traveled through the land as far as the site of the great trees and more in Salmon. You know, so at that time the Canaanites, you know, they was living in the land at that time. You know, so it wasn't ready for them to be, you know, taking them out the land and all that, because that's for his offspring, you know, when they get ready to possess the land. All Abraham gonna do, he gonna be living on that land, and God let him know that's gonna be for your offspring, because you know, God already know Abraham already 75 years old, so he couldn't follow through the plan. You know, so the law appeared, you know, to Abraham and said to your offspring, I will give this land to. Abraham built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. You know, so he built an altar. It was a reminder of him that God appeared to him and that God made a promise to him. You know, so now this God plan, just at the beginning of God plan, you know, Abraham offspring, which will be the Israelite, you know, he will give this land to them. Will be filled with milk and honey. You know, so now Abraham went towards the hill, the east of Bethlehem, and pitched his tent. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Now he built this altar to be a reminder that God had promised to him. You know, because down the line, when I talk to y'all, they're gonna be you know, his wife Sarah could not conceive no children. You know, so Abraham gonna pray and remind God about that altar, you know, that you made a promise to me. You know, so then Sarah gonna conceive a child, you know, so he gonna bring this promise up to God. You know, they're gonna be down the line, when we talk about Sarah. So God planned for Abraham, but his offspring will make it, will make it come to pass. His offspring gonna be the one who make it come to pass, because Abraham gonna die, because he already was 75 years old when God called him. So he called Abraham because he is a righteous man, to his self-centered city of the land called Canaan. And God's centered more nation plan could be established. You know, his plan will be established. One thing about God, when he make a plan out, he gonna make sure it be established, that it gonna follow through. So the land of Canaan was the facial point for most of the history, of Israel. It made history. So as well as Abraham's name also made history. That's all we talk about. The blessing of Abraham. They even made songs of it. The blessing of Abraham, had an impact on the world history. So we talk about Abraham. They even made a song, Abraham, the blessing of Abraham. You know, and so we talk about through the Bible, the Israelite, travel. Try to take the land that God gave them. It took them 40 years, but they got there. No matter how long it take, long as you finish and complete God's plan. We see that the great trees in the land of Canaan. That's why when they had possessed their land, God specifically told them, do not cut these trees. Now we see that these trees are very important in this land. So God had Abraham to see the land first before he entered. We know back then we had Moses. Moses couldn't enter the land, but he did tell Moses, you climb up there in that mountain and you gonna see the land that you were supposed to help the Israelite enter. So he always made sure that you try to see what he trying to get you to, what he trying to get you through. So the altar that Abraham had built, is for prayer and it's for worship. You know, is also as a reminder, of God's promise, to bless him. Because sometimes you have to remind him, because down the line, he had to remind him and bring it to his attention. He said Sarah gonna be the mother of the nations. So Abraham had to bring that up. How she gonna be a mother of the nation? She closed, she can't conceive. So God opened her up, opened her womb up for her to conceive that child to be the mother of the nation. So that's what that also for, to remind him of all these blessings. So God promised to bless him. It also helped him to remind that God was at the center of his life. God was at the center of his life. Because his daddy had died. His daddy died. Then his brother died. Then he had to take over, Lot. So he went through a lot until God called him. And God been a center of Abraham's life up until his death. So one, we see that this is the first step of God's plan. It started with Abraham, and then his offspring had to take over and bring it to the finish line. So two, it's about the land of Canaan. God chose this land, for his plan. So God chose this land for his plan. He also had great trees in this land. And we know down the line he gonna have this land filled up with milk and honey. This gonna be the best land for the Israelites to enter. It's gonna take a long time, but they enter. It took a long time for them to come out of Egypt, but they came out of it. So no matter how long it takes, long as you achieve and establish God's plan. So three, God had Abraham to see the land first. God called Abraham about the land. First it was his father. The father was heading on to the land with the whole family. And he settled in the land because I guess he was sick because he died in the land that he settled. Never made it to Canaan. So since the father couldn't accomplish, then he called Abraham and to get the plan started. And then Abraham already was old, so it had to be finished through his offspring. So God, so 5, God will make him a great nation. God promised to make Abraham a great nation. You know, Abraham offspring was a great nation, the Israelite. The Israelite had multiplied as a great nation. And so they accomplished what God had written out for them to do. So God had promised to bless Abraham. You know, God had promised Abraham name that it was gonna be great. His name was gonna be great, and his name sure was great. It made history. You know, God also told Abraham he would be a blessing. So God blessed those who blessed Abraham. Whoever cursed Abraham, God was gonna curse them. So God will bless all the people on the earth will be blessed through Abraham. You know, this was a blessing. And it was 2 years after the flood. You know, I'm I'm really understanding a whole lot of this story. That's why a lot of time I'm doing a repeat, and sometimes the second repeat be better than the first one because I get more extra details that I didn't get for the first time. So this was Noah, uh, offspring, Abraham. It was 2 years after. So when I did it the first time, I'm like, well, he killed everybody. He destroyed everybody on the earth. I'm like, how? He called Abraham. So now I see Abraham, father was from Noah's sons. You remember, God had told Noah's family, y'all get out the boat. You know, I need y'all to scatter all over the earth to multiply. And Abraham and his father were one of the multipliers of the son, of Noah's son. So God will bless all the people on earth, will be blessed through Abraham. Now, this is a great call from God. I mean, you would love to get a call like that from God. I mean, God called Abraham and went straight, dig right into it. I'm gonna make your name great. I'm gonna make you a great nation. I'm gonna bless you. You're gonna be a blessing. Who would love to get a phone call or get a call like that from God? So that was an amazing call that Abraham had got. And it was right after his father died, his brother died. And God always do things right on time. Did that right on time after he was mourning from his father and his brother. So now Abraham name of great. This story is God plan. It made history. It made history. This is all we talk about. It's all through the Bible. And God got glory over this story. He got so much glory over his story. He uses power. He used miracles. He did everything for the Israelites that give him glory. So God had this plan written out for a long time. And when he started out with Abraham, he started out with Abraham, but God already know, God already know that he was 75 years old. So God already put other people in place, his other offspring in place. He was 75 years old, so he had two other people that was placed in the place of Abraham, because he knew he was gonna be dying soon, for already in age when God called him. So he had Isaac in place next. Isaac. Then Isaac got old. See, the plan was supposed to start it, but for some reason it didn't get started off. Off the ground. And then Jacob was the third link. When Jacob saw that ladder come down from heaven, and God had that conversation with him, he was supposed to get the plan started. He let himself get old, but God pushed his way through his plan. And God meant he was gonna get his plan through. So even though he was old, when he was supposed to do it, when he saw God in that ladder come down, Jacob was kind of young then. You know, that's why God had to follow him in the desert, you know, and wrestle with him like, you know, like I had told you, you know, what you were supposed to do, you know, and Jacob had to let himself got so old, you know, so God had to put his plan in his son dream, Joseph. He put his plan in Joseph's dream. Well, Joseph tried to tell the brothers about the dream, and God got it started. You know, it got started through Joseph, and it's supposed to be through Jacob. You know, but one way or another, God gonna get it started, and one way or another, God gonna make sure it gets finished. You know, so Jacob family brought it to the finish line. Yeah, it started out with Joseph. You know, started out with Joseph, and that's when they multiplied as a great nation, and they finished. They took it to the finish line. Now, God's plan was complete with Abraham's offspring, the Israelite, come from Jacob family. Started out with Joseph. You know, God got glory over this story. You know, and also made history. You know, now we see God's plan had finished. You know, and we see that God's plan was way at the beginning. You know, I started out with Adam and Eve. You know, then we started out with Eve children. Then we started out with the flood. You know, so that means this plan has started out a long time ago, also at the beginning of the creation. You know, and it did not get off the feet until God had to put it in Joseph's dream. You know, to get it started, because he been got it in Jacob, but Jacob, you know, didn't get anything started. He allowed himself to get old. You know, but one way or another, God got it moving and he got it done. You know, so we see that God's plan has started out 2 years after the flood. You know, he brought it to Abraham's attention. And I guess he brought it to his father's attention because the father was heading on to Canaan until he died. You know, until, you know, he know Abraham was a righteous man on earth. You know, these 2 years after the flood. You know, and he come from Noah bloodline. You know, so this is the story when God plan first came to place. When he spoke it to Abraham. You know, he spoke it to Abraham. He called Abraham and told Abraham, you know, I'm gonna make your name great. You know, you're gonna be a great nation. You know, I'm gonna bless you. You know, you will be a blessing to so many people. You know, everyone on earth will be blessed through you, Abraham. You know, so God made his name great, even though he didn't survive. So that's why God loved the Israelites so much, because God really wanted Abraham to follow through, but he already was at age. You know, and that's why he loved the Israelites so much, because he loved the Abraham that much. You know, I already talked to you how Abraham was tested through his son Isaac, you know, with the sacrifice, you know, and Abraham died, and God still was blessing Abraham offspring. You know, it's still, the promises still have went on. You know, and God loved the Israelites. You know, anything that was through Abraham was loved and blessed. You know, even though they made mistakes and got on God's nerves sometimes, God still followed through with them. You know, because he made a promise to Abraham, and he made sure that the promise still followed through. You know, even though he passed away, God still was following through. God was still being faithful to Abraham even when he's gone. You know, his faithfulness, his promises was through Abraham offspring. And we see that God's plan started out way 2 years after the flood. And no telling how long he had written. God had written it out after he did the creation. You know, but it took a long time, but it still followed through. You know, we know that Abraham's name is great. We know that Abraham was a blessing to the whole world. to the whole nation, to the whole earth. Abraham was a blessing. So that's all the word I have for you on today. Y'all have a blessed night, and I will see you all on the next video.